The man said it loud enough for the whole crew to hear. It was March 1955, and Stage 12 at Republic Pictures smelled the way a working soundstage smells: cable grease, sawdust, the particular flat iron heat of film lights burning against painted canvas. They were setting up a saloon fight sequence for a picture that would start shooting the following Monday, and the stunt coordinator had his men walking through the blocking on a half-dress set, overturned tables, breakaway chairs, a balsa wood bar top that would splinter correctly on camera if you hit it at the right angle. The kind of choreography that takes 2 days to build and 4 seconds to film. The man who said it was named Del Corey. He had been doing stunt work in Hollywood for 9 years, and he had broken his left collarbone twice, and his right wrist once, and 3 ribs at separate times on separate pictures. And he had an opinion about the word fake. John Wayne was standing 20 feet away, listening. What happened in the 4 seconds that followed would make Del Corey the man who told that story for the rest of his life, and would change the way he told it every time. Here is the story. Del Corey had come to Hollywood in 1946 from Odessa, Texas, where he had spent 3 years after the war working cattle and riding in small purse rodeos on weekends, mostly saddle bronc and a little bull riding, because it paid, and because the part of him that had come back from the Pacific needed something loud to do on Saturday afternoons. He had been a Marine, 2nd Battalion, 1st Marines, Cape Gloucester in January 1944, then Peleliu in September of that year, 46 days of fighting through coral ridges and limestone caves against an enemy that had been ordered not to retreat, in heat that ran to 115 degrees by mid-morning and did not drop at night. Of the men in his squad who landed on Peleliu, 4 came back to the States walking. Del was one of the 4. He did not talk about it, which was common. He carried it the way men of that generation carried things, not on the outside, in words, but in the particular way he moved through the world afterward, without flinching and without requiring a second take, which in 1946 was worth more in Hollywood than it sounds. He had drifted into stunt work sideways, the way most stuntmen of that era did. Somebody needed a man who could ride. Somebody else needed a man who could fall without breaking. And Del could do both and make it look right on the first try. He had worked his way up from background riding to featured stunt work across 11 pictures in 9 years, which was a respectable record for a man who had not come up through the circus or the rodeo circuit's formal pipeline. He was not famous. Nobody who did what he did was famous. The Screen Actors Guild paid him $85 a day on pictures that paid the lead actor $150,000 for the run of the show, and Del had made his peace with that arithmetic the same way he had made his peace with most things, by not thinking about it too long. What he had not made his peace with, and what had been building since sometime in 1953, was the word that civilians used for what he did. Fake. He had heard it from a cousin at Thanksgiving. He had heard it from a man at a bar in Burbank, who had recognized him from a picture and meant it as a compliment. You make it look so real, even though it's all fake. He had heard it from a journalist who had come to do a piece on Hollywood stunt work, and had used the word 3 times in the first 5 minutes of the interview, as if it were simply the accurate word, which perhaps from the journalist's position it was. Del had not said anything on any of those occasions. He was not a man who explained himself in public. But on Stage 12 at Republic Pictures on a Tuesday morning in March 1955, they were blocking a sequence that required Del to take a chair across the back. A real chair, because the breakaway chairs weren't ready until Thursday, and land on a table that would then collapse under him onto the floor, and the fight coordinator was describing this sequence to the assembled crew, using the phrase "selling the fake" for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. And something in Del Corey's 9 years, and 3 fractured ribs and 2 broken collarbones, and Peleliu in September 1944 rose up and said what it had been holding for 2 years. "Movie fights are fake," Del said. He said it clearly, to the room, the way a man states a thing he's decided to stop pretending isn't true. The chair's real. The floor's real. The table's real. The only thing fake about it is that somebody else is getting paid $150,000 to act like they threw the chair. The crew went quiet the way crews go quiet when something has been said that cannot be unsaid. John Wayne had been standing at the edge of the set, watching the blocking walk through. He had a coffee cup in his hand. He had not been part of the exchange. He set the coffee cup down on a cable reel and walked over to where the breakaway chairs were stacked. He picked one up. He walked to the center of the set and looked at Del. 4 seconds. That is how long it took. 4 seconds, and it was over. If you've ever done real work that someone else called easy, drop your state in the comments. I want to see how far this story reaches. Wayne did not say anything. He turned the chair in his hands, looking at the construction. He found the joint where the leg met the seat, the place where breakaway chairs are designed to separate, and he put his thumb on it. Then he looked at Del. "Hit me with it." Del Corey looked at the chair. He looked at the man holding it. He was a man who had ridden saddle bronc in Odessa, Texas, and fought at Pelileo, and he was not easily made uncertain. Mr. Wayne, same as the sequence. Across the back. Full weight. A beat of silence. Del took the chair. He swung it the way the sequence called for it. Full rotation, full commitment. The same swing he would use when the cameras were rolling, because Del Corey did not have a practice swing and a real swing. He had one swing. The chair came apart the way breakaway chairs are supposed to come apart, in a clean explosion of balsa and dowel across Wayne's back and shoulders. Wayne turned around. He looked at Del. He was not rubbing his back. His expression had not changed. "Again," he said. Del looked at the pieces of the chair on the floor. "Get a real one," Wayne said to no one in particular. Someone on the crew picked up a standard chair from behind the camera line, the kind of chair that does not come apart. Wayne took it and handed it to Del. Del held it. He looked at Wayne. He understood, in the specific way a man who has been in real danger understands things, that Wayne was not performing, that this was not a piece of theater, that whatever was about to happen was going to happen at full weight, on a man who was 51 years old, and not small but not 25 either, in front of a crew on a Tuesday morning. "Across the back," Wayne said. "Same as before." Del swung it. Wayne went down on one knee. He held that for a moment. Then he stood up. He did not rush the standing. He turned and faced Del, and his voice had dropped to the register he used when the subject was settled. "The difference between that and the other one," he said, "is about what you're owed for the work." He picked up his coffee cup from the cable reel. He looked at Del for another moment. "I've been doing your job in front of a camera for 20 years. Every man on this crew who does what you do goes home knowing what it cost. I've never once said fake." He paused. "The word you're looking for is invisible." Del Corey did not say anything. Wayne walked back to where he had been standing. The crew went back to work. Del Corey did stunt work in Hollywood for 11 more years after that morning. He retired from the work in 1966 with a left shoulder that had been separated twice more and a right knee that made stares an opinion rather than a certainty, and the kind of record that does not appear in any box office accounting, but is legible to any man who has ever been on a soundstage when the hard work was happening. He went back to Texas. He bought a small place outside of Midland, not cattle this time, just land, because he had earned the right to land that didn't need anything from him. He married a woman named Cecilia in 1967, and they had one daughter, Louise, who grew up hearing the story of Stage 12 at Republic Pictures, in the way children grow up hearing the stories that define the shape of a parent, not the version with Wayne's name in it, not at first. Del told it as a story about a man and a chair. He told it because it was the story that had given him the word he had been missing for 9 years. Invisible, not fake, not pretend. Invisible, which is a different thing entirely, because invisible means the craft is so complete that the audience cannot see it, and that is not a failure of recognition, but the highest form of success at the particular job. Louise grew up and became a physical therapist in Midland, which is not as far from her father's work as it might sound. She spent 32 years returning movement to bodies that had lost it, working with men who had come back from Vietnam and later from the Gulf with injuries that required the same quality her father had carried: the willingness to absorb what the work costs and keep moving without advertising what it cost. She trained 7 physical therapists over the course of her career. She told them all the same thing on their first day, in words that had come down to her through her father from a Tuesday morning on a soundstage in 1955. The work that nobody sees is still the work. Show it by doing it, not by explaining it. Her own daughter, Renata, became a nurse in Midland in 2004 and worked the night shift at the same hospital for 14 years. The shift that nobody asks for and nobody thanks you for, and she was good at it for the same reason her grandmother had been good at falling. She did not require anyone to watch. Del died in Midland in November 1991, at the age of 68. His daughter kept a photograph of him on the wall of her clinic waiting room. Del in his rodeo years, young and certain, on a horse that was doing something a horse does not agree to do, with a small plaque below it that read, in her handwriting, "The work that nobody sees is still the work." She had not learned that from Wayne. She had learned it from her father. But her father had learned it on a Tuesday morning in March 1955 from a man who picked up a chair and said, "Again." The photograph was on that wall for 30 years. The afternoon light in the waiting room in Midland comes in long and low in the late fall, and it found the photograph the same way every afternoon, and moved on. John Wayne never told anyone about Stage 12, not the director of the picture, not the producer, not in any interview given in the 30 years of interviews that followed, and there were many. He went back to his coffee, and the blocking continued, and the sequence shot on Thursday the way it was supposed to shoot. And Del Corey took the chair across the back on camera and landed on the collapsing table, and it cut together the way good stunt work cuts, invisibly. Which was the point. There is a kind of man who corrects a wrong idea not by arguing with it, but by demonstrating the thing it got wrong. Who does not say you're mistaken, but instead picks up the chair and says again. Who understands that the men doing the work that nobody names are owed at least one accurate word for what they do. He gave Del Corey a word. He did not give him a speech or a check or a credit on the picture. He gave him the accurate word for the thing he had been doing for 9 years. Some gifts don't look like gifts when they arrive. If this story reached you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe if you haven't yet. There are more stories like this one, and every one of them deserves to be told. And unfortunately, they don't make men like John Wayne anymore.